Welcome to the ANEW Body Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogrammed Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. And Chantal Donnelly, physical therapist and author of Settled, How to Find Calm in a Stress-Inducing World. We follow our guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Welcome back to the ANEW Body Insight Podcast. We are back for the second half of our interview with the amazing author, life fulfillment expert, and clinical psychologist, Dr. Carla Marie Manly. Dr. Carla, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be with you.
Wonderful. Dr. Carla gave us invaluable insight into relationships, and she is back now to talk about something that I think a lot of us really tend to kind of stress out about, and hopefully we can reduce this stress. We are going to talk about joyful aging. Dr. Carla, welcome back. Tell us about your book, Aging Joyfully. I know that it offers a really inspiring take on embracing the aging process. What are the key mindset shifts that people need to make to age with grace and joy?
Wow, that's a big question. I think it was my second book. Aging Joyfully is the title of my second book. And one of the reasons I wrote it was because, as with each one of my books, I always feel called to write them, as though something's coming through me saying, write this. This is what you need to write now. And what I had been running into, I used to run pre-pandemic a women's support group, in addition to my private practice with over 300 members. And I was hearing from women, get this, from about 25 and older, one of the most constant things I heard was, I am no longer relevant.
Wow.
I am
25?
getting 25.
Oh my gosh.
I am no longer relevant. I am no longer, yes. And so when I was talking to my publisher about the book, they wanted to make it for women 60 and older. And I said, no, it needs to be women 40 and older. So we went back and forth, and they finally did it for 50 and older. But I know in my heart, it's for women of every age.
Yes.
Because in today's youth-driven world, so this is the first point I want to bring up, the first cure, so to speak. Realize we are in a youth-driven world that makes money from making women and men, it doesn't matter your gender, from making us feel old.
Yes.
And the sooner they get into our heads, whether it's at 15, 18, 25, 35, 85, it doesn't matter. But they're starting much earlier to tell us that we need to look 17 in order, or 16, which is when you start looking at the ads, that's really what most of them are going for, this sort of 16-year-old look, that anything older than that is not beautiful, is too old, is no longer relevant. Then we can see this pernicious influence to make us what? They want us to buy. They want us to buy clothes, products, lotions, lipstick, injections, plastic surgery, whatever it is. And I'm not judging any of that. You, as listeners, do what makes you feel good, but do it for the right reason. Do it for a reason that's coming from you. As one of my dear friends says, you want to look at that face in the mirror and find it familiar and lovely.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
that may be wrinkles. It may be gray hair. It may be loads of makeup. It may be no makeup, whatever it is. But you get to decide when you look in that mirror, not what you're seeing on Instagram, not what you're seeing in a magazine or on a screen. You get to decide, when I look at that in that mirror, I love that person. Some of that is going to be exterior, right? The look, the external features. Most of it, this is the second piece, most of it comes from that light inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
That light that allows you to radiate, that allows you to be beautiful. And this is the example I use. There's a woman, Marion Woodman, she's now passed away. She had written Addiction to Perfection. And she found her
Mm.
calling in life when she was, I believe, in her 50s. And I met her when she was like 82. She was stunning.
Mm.
Vibrant cornflower blue eyes, wrinkles everywhere, beautiful gray hair, but she was gorgeous.
Wow.
Her energy was just this incredible, loving. I, I was entranced. And
Mm.
that is ageless beauty. So
Yes.
we want to notice that we get to decide as individuals, regardless of gender, regardless of age,
Mm-hmm.
who we want to be in the world
Yes.
and lean into that. So this is the third piece, which they all tie together. The world has a lot of ageism in it. And
Yes.
we hear this from especially women who want to get back into the workforce after they've retired. I know a woman who was telling me recently, well educated, good job, retired. She needs to supplement her pension because it's a small one. And she went to a local gardening store and they said, maybe you're better off volunteering somewhere. And
Wow.
this is a woman, very agile, very fit. She's in her late 60s and she was
Mm-hmm.
gently nudged to go garden or volunteer somewhere where she could do that, not a paid position. That's ageism from the outer world.
Absolutely.
And that's another piece. We want to be able to fight ageism,
Mm-hmm.
be able to stand up and notice if we are doing it to other people. If you're in a
Mm.
helping profession, and I know many clients have told me, a client was telling me the other day, they went to the doctor and the doctor was saying, well, you're a bit old for us to do this surgery. It's an elective surgery, but the person's physical health is there. But the doctor was judging whether or not the surgery should be done because it was elective when it was something that was the client wanted it done. And
Wow.
so there is a lot more ageism in the external world when we think that medical practitioners are doing it. I could see not doing a surgery because somebody's heart is really,
Yes.
in precarious shape because they're 95. That makes sense. But for somebody who's wanting a surgery, say no because you're this old. I had another client tell me she saw her OBGYN was talking about her sex drive going down and she was in her 60s. The doctor, get this, listeners, said, well, at your age, do you still really want to be having sex?
Wow.
Is
I
that,
could go on and on about doctors and the things that they've said and the things that I've heard.
yes. So we want to be careful because many people look up to medical doctors and that person, had they not talked to me, they maybe have thought, was there something wrong with me that I want to have sex with my partner still? I mean, is that something I'm supposed to stop at 55? Like, am I going over the speed limit here?
Yeah, there's
No.
an expiration date on your
Yes, there's
sex
an
life,
expiration to
apparently.
sexuality, unless you're a male, in which case
Mm-hmm.
it shows signs of virility. But if you're, so we want to look at ageism, second, and have questions.
Yes.
Be curious. If somebody's telling you something that sounds as if it's ageism, like that comment about the individual's sexuality, desire to have
Mm-hmm.
sex, it's okay to call it. And it's okay to say, I think I'm going to put in a complaint on that because that was a
Yes.
really inappropriate thing to say to me. I can
And,
have
and it's
sex.
sexist as well.
Oh, it's sexist, and that individual can have sex until they are 108 years old if it's so
Mm-hmm.
if that's what. So we want to be aware to not just be accepting, but if
Mm-hmm.
something sounds like ageism, it likely is. The next
Wow.
piece is to be aware of self-ageism. And I coined this term in Aging Joyfully because we want to be aware if we're doing it to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Notice, listeners, anytime you're saying, I'm too old to start a second
Yes.
career. I'm too
Mm-hmm.
old to write a book. I'm too old to leave my partner. I'm too old to get married. I'm too old to get a partner. I'm too old to run a marathon. Hey, you may not be physically fit enough to run a marathon, but you might be able to get fitness enough to do that.
Mm-hmm.
To really do some strength training. You might not finish in the top 10, maybe you will. But the point is, notice that voice that is telling you that you're too old to do anything,
Mm-hmm.
because you have the capacity to do whatever you want to do until
Yes,
the day you're not physically on the planet anymore. And
exactly.
yes,
I
go.
love it. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Henry Ford. Whether you think you are or you think you aren't, either way, you are right.
Absolutely. And those voices that are telling us we aren't or we can't, they are one of the biggest killers of joy.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Absolutely.
it's like a parent sitting on your shoulder, or somebody constantly shaming you, telling no, 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 you can't, you can't. No, we want to be our biggest cheerleaders. We want to be saying,
Mm-hmm.
well, yeah, it might take me a little longer, but I could do that. Oh, it might be
Mm-hmm.
something I've never done. And of course, I'm not saying to do things that are unsafe. If you're have a hip replacement, you might not want to be jumping out of a parachute, but maybe if your doctor clears you, maybe you can. It's
Mm-hmm.
really all about noticing that a joy set point, an
Mm-hmm.
optimism set point. Yes, we do have that natural set point. Research shows
Mm-hmm.
that, but we can overcome. So if you have a set point that's a little bit more pessimistic, your actions can overcome that. How you start
Mm-hmm.
your day. I'm a huge believer in affirmations, in using music to uplift, in using gratitudes to uplift, in
Mm-hmm.
using connection to uplift, because just like depression can be contagious, negativity can be contagious. And what I mean by that, I'm sure anyone who's been around somebody who's in a really negative mood, just going around being really grumpy and Eeyore-ish, it tends to
Mm-hmm.
be a bit contagious. It's like, no, no, this doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
good. Ugh, I feel worse now. But if we
Mm-hmm.
work on leaning into optimism, hope, positivity, making our world bigger, we often, as we age, make our world smaller.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I
Yes.
love how you talked about the ageism that we see, especially through social media, through advertising, through what, we're told that we're not good enough at a certain age. And
Mhm.
I think it is so important for people to start to filter out those voices. I mean, this is a part of my book in Deprogram Diet Culture, where people are trying to sell us stuff. And I think we really need to be as cognizant about that as possible. And the way that they sell things to us is by telling us we're not good enough. But going deep within, like you are talking about, increasing your optimism, really watching how you talk to yourself and calling out people who are telling us, whether or not we are done with having sex or we're too old for this. Being our own best expert and saying, I don't agree with that. And this is how I am going to present myself to the world and be proud of that. I love all of this because most people see aging as loss. I hear it all the time. I'm too old, or oh, aging sucks. And, getting old sucks. My mom says that a lot, and I'm always like, oh, Mom, don't say that, because I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So give me your take on how to reframe that. What would you suggest people say to themselves, or how do they get out of that kind of mindset?
One of the ways we get out of that mindset is first to become aware that we're in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because in truth, we are aging from the moment we are born. So
Mm-hmm.
we are always aging, and aging does involve loss, but everything involves loss. An infant
Mhm.
who, loses their first teeth. A
Mhm.
teenager is losing often, some of the baby fat, and their neural pruning is taking place all the time where we're losing so many of the neurons that we're not using. We are
Mhm.
losing all the time. But when we're
Mhm.
young, we're not focusing on it. When we're
Mhm.
young, we're focusing on the horizons and this big, vast future. Yet, in truth, even if we're 14, we don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow.
Mhm.
We don't know that if we're 55 or 85. So the best we can do is really focus on that beautiful horizon we have, which is today. We're
Mhm.
not certain, any of us, that we will have it tomorrow. We only have this today. So really
Mhm.
I think one of the biggest mindset shifts we can make in the aging process is to realize, yes, I might be experiencing a little more difficulty running or even walking or seeing, yet I can still walk. I can
Mhm.
still see. And
Mhm.
I'll never forget, it was just before the pandemic. I was in my bank and a woman came in, and I don't know how she walked there because there weren't a lot of homes nearby. And she came in and they said, "Hello, Mrs. So and so. How are you doing today?" And she had this big walker and was going along, big, vibrant smile. And she said, "I'm still walking." And you could, I
Oh,
mean, it was just because that's what she was really paying attention to, was the fact that she
yes.
could still walk. And I'm certain not certain, but I would imagine that when she was a lot younger, she wasn't using a walker and was, a lot more agile. Yet you could see that she was grateful. And so that's
Mm.
the piece where our choice comes in. We
Mhm.
can be grateful for what we
Mhm.
have, for the sight that we do
Mhm.
have, for the, physical abilities we do have. We can use our energy to be grateful and to make those areas as strong as possible, or we can
Mhm.
lament our loss and put that same
Mhm.
amount of energy into a void of
Mhm.
negativity. We can do that. We can pour it into that empty black pit of negativity. And that's the part we don't have a choice about aging. We don't. It's happening
Yeah.
to everybody. But we can choose how we see it, how we choose to embrace it every day.
Yes, it's the essence of mindfulness that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I think that most people are either, ruminative about the past, or they're anxious about this future that's about to come. And especially as they get older, I think they really do fear being infirm, being useless, or, not having their faculties, because that's how aging is portrayed here. But if you look in other cultures, especially with the blue zones, I think the blue zones are so fascinating to me because I think that they really do embody much more mindfulness. They're present in their day, they're out gardening, they're really focusing on their social interactions, and they've done this their entire lives. And I think cultivating that as soon as you can so that you can really appreciate what's happening right now will actually make you stronger, make you more resilient to any kind of physical difficulties. I absolutely love that. You talk a lot about emotional intelligence as we age. Tell us a little bit more about that. Tell us how that evolves with age and how older adults can continue to cultivate that.
I see emotional intelligence as such a gift because, unlike our cognitive intelligence, which is pretty much inborn, we can grow it, but it's, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much inborn. EQ, emotional intelligence, is something that we can all attain if we put in
Mm-hmm.
effort. And emotional intelligence, for listeners who really don't know much about it, it is about, especially if you were raised in an environment in childhood where there wasn't healthy conflict resolution, healthy emotional regulation, generally healthy social skills, empathy, all of these really important pieces, you might think, oh, well, I'm good. People at work like me. My wife doesn't connect with me. My boyfriend doesn't like me. I've been through relationship after relationship. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that might tell you that your EQ isn't high. And again, the lovely part about EQ is it can be earned. We can all get high levels of EQ. It takes work. It takes mindfulness. It takes
Mm-hmm.
slowing down. And often, um, the complaints other people have registered to us if we start listening to them. Oh, you never listen to me, or oh, you always make things about you, or oh, you
Mm-hmm.
get overly dramatic, or oh, you're always angry. If we listen to some of that, we might have some clues, not always, to where we can lean into greater emotional intelligence. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why conflict resolution is one of those really key skills, because EQ is not a given. It does not necessarily come as you get older. So there are
Mm-hmm.
people in their, 20s who may have great EQ, and people in their 70s and 80s who may have terrible EQ. What we want
Mm-hmm.
to realize is sometimes in later life, when we're out of that daily grind of raising kids and getting ahead financially, we might have more time. Not that we can't always make time to do self work, but sometimes as we get a bit older, we have a little bit more free time on our hands to engage in self work. And that is
Mm-hmm.
when we can read books or work with a psychotherapist to
Mm-hmm.
learn things like reflective listening,
Mm-hmm.
mirroring back what somebody says rather than always,
Mm.
attacking or not listening at all. And so as we start to develop our EQ, we feel better about ourselves. And it's interesting, we were talking before about in the other podcast about at the very end where you wrapped it up and you said, well, you seem so calm and like you wouldn't have conflict. I actually have decided long ago that I don't allow conflict in my life. I don't
Mm.
mind disagreement in my life. I don't
Mhm.
mind differences, but I don't do conflict. I
I
try
love it.
yes, because when we use, and I talk about this in my fourth book, The Joy of Imperfect Love, people will say, oh, I'm so conflict avoidant. I'm conflict avoidant. And
Mm.
the reason I even try and help couples not use words like fight is because
Hmm.
the minute we use words like fight, the body is thinking, okay, I'm going to war.
Yeah,
There's going to be a winner. There's going to be a loser. And when
totally.
we have that mindset in intimate relationships, somebody's going to go down and nothing is likely going to get resolved. But when we instead
Hmm.
say, we can disagree, let me hear your perspective. I want to, then offer my perspective. Let's see where we can join on this, where we can collaborate, where we can commune, as in
Beautiful.
communicate. And
Beautiful.
when we do that, and I actually learned that throughout, the years of realizing, wait a second, if I just take conflict off the table, if I take fighting off the table, and if somebody wants to fight with me, I'll say, I'm not fighting with you. When you're a little cooler,
Yes.
I'll have a discussion with you. We can
Yes.
sit and commune about this topic, but no, I'm not going to fight with you. There's no
Yes, I
no upside.
agree. I feel like the more objective we become in just kind of having a level of metacognition, oh, I'm getting mad. What do I need
Mhm.
to do in order to calm down? That leads us towards connection and away from conflict. And I think that that is so important. And I love that, we can cultivate this as we grow older. You also talk a lot about the mind, body, spirit connection and holistic wellness. And I think it's all tied. What we were just talking about, holistic wellness is a part of that. How do people nurture their mind, body, spirit connection? What tips do you have for people?
I love that you said metacognition,
Mhm.
because I believe that is one of the biggest steps is to simply work on realizing that we can go above, get bigger. We can see
Mm-hmm.
things from different perspectives. We can get out of this I am and into something larger than that, that allows us to see that as singular units, life is very meaningless. We can't
Yes.
exist, solo, not for very long. That we do
Mm-hmm.
need community, that we do want healthy interactions. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we look at the body, mind, spirit connection, that I often talk about the Cartesian split, which
Mm.
dates back to Descartes, who was, at the forefront of helping us believe, wanting us to believe that the body and the mind were two separate things and that the body was a machine. And that
Mm.
was the first time really in history where people started looking at a split between body, mind, spirit. Because before, and especially in ancient tribes, right, it was
Mm.
all connected. You are a being, a
Yes.
spirit, you are all
Yes.
one. And so now we have to work to realize, to come back to that place of you, I, we are body, mind, spirit, and that
Yes.
there is that constant interplay of the three. And our world also the society tries to tell us that it's not so, that we can do an
Mm-hmm.
action, we can thieve, we can lie, we can cheat, we can steal, and we're getting away with something. We'll get ahead in life. The body, mind, spirit connection really reminds us that, which is, I believe, why some people don't subscribe to it. They don't like that trinity, the responsibility that comes with when you hurt someone else, you rob,
Mm-hmm.
cheat, steal, lie, whatever. That is affecting your own body, your own mind, your own
Mm-hmm.
spirit, that beautiful trinity. And it's,
Yes.
yes, because then you get out of balance, whether you acknowledge it or not. You become more out of balance because ideally you're working to find your North Star, to live your North Star. And as you
Mm.
do that, it does create more awareness of what the body, mind, and spirit need. And I think we see this in the world of addiction, where people
Mm.
get, unfortunately, so out of balance with their body, with the mind, and with that beautiful spirit, that they're
Mm.
looking for some substance, whether it's
Mm.
alcohol, oxy, weed, work, sex, whatever addiction it is, shopping, for self-soothing, when really the soothing is available once you learn to make friends with your being. Your
Yes.
body wants you to breathe. Your body wants you to rest. Your body wants you to
Mm-hmm.
have this beautiful homeostasis of peace. But we often get into this fight or flight game that is the mind racing, 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 and the body saying, "Oh my God, I'm so tired of running and racing," and da da da. And the spirit sometimes just checks out, I think.
Yes,
And
I
so
agree.
I really believe that when we become more mindful, and it takes us back to the place of connection and
Yes.
communication, so many of the healthiest societies have practices that encourage connection to the self.
Mm-hmm.
Walking by the sea or in town, sitting at a cafe, joining, having community, having family down the street, round the corner, making time for life.
Yes.
Life
Oh,
versus
Dr. Carla,
yes.
yes. I resonate with everything you say, and I think it is so important as we age that we learn how to truly love ourselves. I think we live in a society that really promotes self-hatred, and I think it is so detrimental to us, especially as we age. And if we can start to filter out some of these influences and really tune into our body, our mind, and our spirit, and listen to what it's actually wanting, and shift our focus away from what we don't have to what we do have, we can then age joyfully. We are out of time, but I want people to know how they can get a hold of you. How do they work with you? How do they get your books? Tell us everything.
My website is probably the easiest, drcarlamanly.com, CarlaManly. You can see links to my books there, links to my podcast, Imperfect Love. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, all the usual places. So probably the best entry point is my website.
Yes, I highly recommend everybody get to know Dr. Carla. I've been so lucky to be able to do that, being on her podcast, having her be on mine. I know Dr. Carla and I are going to be connected for life. She's never leaving my life. You can never leave my life, Dr. Carla. You're so amazing. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Carla, for tuning in.
Thank you, amazing Dr. Supatra. Your energy is just blissful. You are so radiant. So thank you for having me. Thank you to your listeners as well.
I feel like we're mirroring each other because that's what I see in you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the A New Body Insight podcast. We are looking forward to our next exciting interview. We really hope you join us next time. Wow! Thanks for tuning into the A New Body Insight podcast. Please remember, the content shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the A New Body Insight podcast tab. Follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.